Welcome to the first step of this rural waste management guide. This step actually has 3 activities. The first one is that you are meeting the village lead. The second activity is that you are doing an observation in the village. So you walk around, you see how people are actually doing related to solid waste. So the third activity is that you try to bring all the people in the village together to a general meeting to discuss the activities. Now we are starting with the first activity, meeting the village lead. So the objective of this first meeting is to actually get an agreement with the village leader on what you actually want to do, and that he will participate in these activities as good as he can. So the main activities which you actually should do is, for sure, you should introduce your team and the reason why you are coming. This could be very easy when you already work for an NGO or are somehow acquainted with the village, because then probably the village leaders might know you already and the discussion might be pretty easy. However, when you never met anyone in the village and this is a new project or something like this, then it might be a little bit more tricky to convince the village lead to take part in your activities and to lead them as well. So after you introduce your team and the activities, you should try to listen to their issues related to solid waste management. Often you will hear that either waste is thrown in the water and it is polluting the water, or the water cannot flow anymore and that's why there is a lot of mosquitoes, or people are burning their waste in the backyard or somewhere close to the road. So often there are already issues in the village related to this topic, so you can pick up on these. So after you found an agreement on the problem and the village lead kind of agrees that this is important, you should try to plan for your implementation already. That means that you clearly define, okay, these are the activities you actually want to do, and that is where you need the support of the village lead in your activities. So approximately your meeting should take around 1 to 2 hours, depending on how well you actually know the leaders. So the place can be the meeting room. Sometimes the village lead or the development committee has actually an office, so you can meet them there. Otherwise, you can also use a public space, depending on who is coming and joining the meeting. So the main stakeholders you should try to involve during this first meeting are, next to village leaders or village administrators, are actually some influential individuals or groups in the village. That can be CSOs, this could be religious organizations, anyone else where you think, okay, that organization has some influence or power in the village to set up some activities. So the materials you need are maybe pen and pencil, but if you can just listen. Let's look a little bit deeper into the activity. So it might be that the discussion with the village leader might be very rewarding. They might be very enthusiastic about the problem. They might have already some ideas. They did already some activities in the past. They did some cleanups. They might even have a waste collection system. So in that way, your discussion with them might be just bouncing back of ideas. You have your ideas, they have your ideas, and you slowly find an agreement what actually could work. So, but that is not always the case. It could be also much more complicated. So your village leader might be like not really interested in what you propose or what you actually wish to do. So in that case, you should try to find the minimal agreement you can get with them. So there are some things where you really need to get their agreement. So that might be on like the place for a landfill, that might be the support to kind of conduct a general meeting. For some small activities, you might have really need them. But for others, you might be able to shift to another CSO or just work with the village itself or other people in the village, and you could already implement some of the activities. After you have introduced yourself to the village, you should move to the problems. But remember, this is not only for you to understand what is actually happening in the village. It is also for them to kind of gain trust that you are capable of solving the waste issues in the village. When you reach the point that you have the feeling, okay, you understand the problem and they kind of agree with you that you can work on it, you should immediately move into action planning. So the first part in this is that you agree on a set of activities which you will do in the village. So keep in mind that the whole set of activities which you had before the meeting in your head might not be feasible. So you should adapt at this moment and just see, okay, this activity is possible, this activity is possible, this activity is possible. So keep this in your head. So after you have an agreement on this one, you should see which are the main stakeholders in the village which you can involve. So try to get from the village leader, like either it's just a phone number or you introduce them to you. So then you can easily move forward with them and you don't need to kind of continuously involve him or her into the discussion. So these stakeholders can be anything from CSO, existing village committee, religious leaders, a voluntary group, whatever there is. So try to kind of have already the connections to them. Then there are definitely two activities which you want to do in the future where you need to have the commitment of the village leader. The first one is a general meeting. So it is really important that you can conduct a meeting where you involve as many people from the community to have a combined decision that this is actually what you want to do. And everyone agree, okay, we want to work on solid waste and we all participate in this activity. So this is really important. So this has to be led by the village leader. And the more they can involve, the better it is. The more ownership they already can take at this point, the better it is. So try to be very careful and make sure that they are willing to kind of move forward in this direction. Another very important point is actually the landfill. So you will need a dump site in this village. So either they have one already, then it is fine and it's easy. But if they don't, you need to get an agreement as soon as possible from him or her on where this landfill is. Because often it might be on community land or there is no community land, and then it is very complicated. So try to get an agreement on this one as soon as possible. There might already be a discussion on how you want to use this landfill. Is this as a dump site? Will you use it for incineration? So you can have this discussion already depending on how good and how easy is your interaction with the village leader. There might be a few common challenges which appear during this meeting. The first one I want to focus on is actually corruption. So in low-income countries, lower middle-income countries, this is something which is common. So you should be a little bit aware of this one, that the village leadership is kind of expecting something from you. What will you give them? You will give them money, you will give them a landfill, you will give them a car, what will you give them? So you should be very much aware of this and you need to be clear in advance how far you can go. The second one, which is equally important, is actually that they might be not interested in solid waste. Now that could be they have other issues, it might be livelihood, it might be any other thing what currently is happening, right? So in that case, you should try to see how far you actually can go with your activities. A third one is that your administration, your leader is not really actually in power. He might be the village leader, but he actually cannot implement anything. So you will realize this after a few days. He might say, yes, he will organize, he will help you, he will do, and then next day you will see, oh, it actually doesn't happen. So this is also quite a big problem. The last problem I want to actually focus on is skepticism in the village related to your activities. So for them might be that waste is there and they might try something already in the past and it didn't work. So when you come and you propose all this one, say, okay, maybe good, but we don't think this is actually working. So these are the challenges you should keep in mind when you are going to the village. Some tips how you maybe can overcome these challenges. The first one I want to focus on is try to involve maybe not someone from the official village lead, but maybe there is a CSO, there's a volunteer organization, there's a religious leader or religious organization you can actually work with. You might not be able to do all the activities you want to do, but you can start in some part of the village, or you can get like at least some awareness activities done, some smaller activities like composting or some household activities. So in that way, you can at least start something, you can kick off something, and you can then see how far you actually can go. Another way would be is requesting for piloting. No? Can we do something? We will show you how it will work, right? And afterwards, after like a few days, when it does work, okay, we cannot do it. Okay, but until then, please just follow, just help and support us, or we will support you in this mutual agreement of implementation. And then you can see if it is working or not. So when you try to kind of just pull them along, you might get much further than you expect after the first meeting. The last point I think is quite important to consider is to be very clear what you actually can provide to the village. So especially when there is corruption in the village. Yeah. So in that way, you need to be very careful that, okay, we can fund this activity, we can fund a vehicle, we can fund a landfill, we can fund even maybe for some time the collection system, or we cannot. So you should know this before. So when you propose these activities to the village leader, is that you are clear, okay, we can pay for that, we cannot pay for that. In that way, you have already a, let's say, better understanding with them, and you might not run into that problem a few days later when you say, okay, yeah, we do a community collection system, so who will pay for the car? And then suddenly, oh, we don't have money and they don't have money, so what are you going to do? So try to kind of solve these questions during this first meeting.